My dear friends, St. Ambrose was a man of unexpected surprises and indeed resources. He was in the career in service of the Roman system, and for that reason was the man of the hour. When the bishop in Milan died, the voice of either a child or an angel was heard. Ambrosius Episcopus, Ambrosius Episcopus. Ambrose for bishop, Ambrose for bishop. And this was taken by the people as an indication of the will of God, and by popular acclaim he was almost forcibly baptized because he was only a catechumen, and all the rest, including ordination to episcopate. So he, because of his Roman experience, was the man to stand up against precisely the forces of law and order, and indeed to keep them at one point. Strange things happened, e.g. barricading themselves in Milan Cathedral when all the force of the empire was trying to get at them. A man with his flock. He had a sister, Marcella, and we have an ancient mosaic of giving the veil to that Holy Lady, an indication that the Ordo Virginum, Order of Virgins, is the most ancient form of female consecration to the Lord, something which has been taken up now in the canon law of 1983, immediately following the canon that defines hermits. It's canon 604 in their case. I mention it to you because quite often when handling young girls who might be thinking of giving themselves to the Lord, it is an option what they want to be aware of, for this simple reason. If one goes into a convent nowadays, one will find quite often that one's vocation is to be a nurse, and it's not fair. There is section B of that canon which invites a little group of consecrated virgins who have given themselves or wish to give themselves to the Lord through the hands of the bishop to also do so together and to live together. And we had a group of young girls near us in the monastery in France who did just that, habit and war. And because they were young and fresh, it was an interesting little life, simple but authentic, without all the clutter of an aging community. So it is worth bearing that in mind, because many a young girl would have a vocation today, but is put off by what she finds. There was another part of his life which is very important, in fact two. One was his testimony to the faith of the Church on the mysteries. He wrote on the mysteries. Therefore, an early catechesis, complete and entire, which has lost none of its validity. He is one of the four great doctors of the West. He was also a writer of verse, and we still sing his hymns in the office, and many have come even into translation. And St. Benedict, who is posterior to him, when speaking of the part of the office which regards hymnology, just uses the word the Ambrosian, meaning that it's presumably of his composition, any hymn that's around. There is a third point, and it's this: the influence of that man over all the West. You know how, don't you? The wayward Augustine came to town, confused and unclear, a brilliant man full of bits of truth and error, all in one huge brain. He wandered into church, and who was there holding forth but Ambrose, Ambrose, Ambrose. And he was moved to tears by the chant of the Psalms. Liturgy too can be a powerful evangelizer when it's well done. But this man, in quite a short time relatively, given his long quest, sorted him out, and, wait for it, baptized him. He did not need to leave much time then on earth for himself to carry on his ministry, because once he baptized and converted this man, the rest would follow. For in a sense, the mantle of doctor for the West was handed on to him, and Augustine used that colossal brain. And it still comes forth and comes through in all its power, even in translation. You detect immediately St. Augustine when you hear him. Rhetorical questions, one after the other, like gunfire, one more powerful than the other. You can hear him in church, echoing across the centuries. All that because the word of one Ambrose had a powerful effect and changed all time to come. Now, this is the first Friday of December. It's the vigil also of the Immaculate Conception, and I brought something to show you. This now has gone round Ireland and indeed the world under the form of the consecration of homes to the Twin Hearts. Now, why I bring it is this. The first Friday is something which is understood correctly only when we see exactly what is going on. Why did the Lord want to reveal his heart? Well, historically, it's probably linked with the position that the church in France was in at the time. Fear and trembling so great that no one dared to go to communion in some parts, or very, very rarely. The influence of Jansenism. Look at this heart, aflame with love for men. And he goes on, as you know, in those original visions to St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, to talk about the way in which, for all his love, all he receives are these spines, these thorns. And he goes on to say how he is met, for the most part, with only coldness. Compare that with these flames. Coldness, indifference, hardness, callousness. And he goes on that all his graces fall on them without effect. Now, in the context of the word, that is already true. Often one is preaching either in a church or in even a community, it can happen, and one finds or one detects, one picks up the vibes that one or the other is not really receiving the grace of the word. There are indications that is the case. They're looking the other way, they're looking at their watch, they're doing anything but absorbing the grace. So the word is in the air with all its power, but they're not profiting from it. The other is the realm of the sacraments as such, in particular the ones that we receive more than once. The Lord now will be going the other way in his complaint, as it were, but it's become quite the reverse. Now, Our Lady is linked with all that. All that heart feels, the other feels just as much. Just this morning, as I was doing the Stations of the Cross, because a good friend of mine has put up Stations of the Cross in the house, and they're very helpful. I paused a little more than usual, the last one. Now, just look carefully if you possibly can. What has this artist tried to portray there in the 14th station? Well, I suggest that it's something like this. Does that look like a mammy holding her baby? Well, that's the moment. She's taking down her baby from the cross, and one last time she's giving him a maternal hug. Rather like what I saw in Flanders when we were there for the pilgrimage for our local saint, because we looked also at the grave of one of our local poets, and there was a grave there, just 2 words, "My boy." Some mother had put "my boy," or had asked the War Office to do it for her. So that hit me. For some woman, that was her treasure. Just think, multiply that by 1,000,000 times, and then you've got some idea of the union of the two hearts. Our Lady appears also in the fourth station, and there no word is said, but just think of that fulfillment of the prophecy, a sword will pierce your own heart. She's also faithful to the end, and with John on the other side, she's under the cross, torn to bits, and offering, as it were, as a priest on the mystical level, the sacrifice, therefore entering herself into the mystery of redemption, co-redemptrix, as we say now. I want to pause just for a second on this issue of how these two hearts are hurt very, very much in our time, in the sacramental sphere. And I want to help you by bringing you back to our history. This is a crucial moment in the history of mankind, 1905. Now remember how at that time Holy Communion was rare. The Sacred Heart had wanted that First Friday devotion so as to get them at least to come to confession and communion once a month. Now, it was still lingering, therefore, for a long time that people only dared to go after confession and on that monthly basis or whatever. We had an unexpected surprise of Providence in the election of Pius X, because he was a man of the people, a parish priest of poor parents, who had, strangely enough, already in his parish, got the place buzzing with music. He knew the importance of involvement of the people and participation. He was the one who started to commission the monks of Solesmes to get things going as regards the reform of the Gregorian chant, which was corrupt, and on it went. What we're using actually today, it's their work. It all goes back here to them. Now, in 1905, there was this very important change. It was the publication of Quam Singulari. I will just quote a few bits and you'll see why. Frequent and daily communion. Now remember the backdrop. Frequent and daily communion as a thing most earnestly desired by Christ our Lord and by the Catholic Church should be open to all the faithful of whatever rank and condition of life, so that no one who is now, this is the bit, in the state of grace, and who approaches the holy table with the right and devout intention, can lawfully be hindered therefrom. What does that mean? A right intention consists in this, that he who approaches the holy table should do so not out of routine. Now he could see the danger. Look where we're at now. Just on Sunday, I noticed that because now we're in a bigger church and people come out of the woodwork from another formation, it was there. Did you notice how there was quite a bit of activity on the mobile phones going on? Quite a bit of activity at Holy Communion. One or two walking out after communion. You see, it's there. It's so normal that it creeps in even into the Latin Mass. It's the norm, the minimum. We're not really switched on 100%. There are more important things to do at the foot of Calvary. Routine, then. Because routine is at its maximum when a soul goes out of church 1 minute after Holy Communion, a living, moving tabernacle who's more interested in getting a cup of coffee. Or vain glory. Now that's against the backdrop of people who didn't dare, therefore if they went, they might be kind of snobbish. Or human respect. Now that's something which has come up in this form recently. People are pressurized. They go bench by bench, pew by pew, and the whole lot have to go at a confirmation. That's what it boils down to. There's pressure, social pressure. And who cares what God thinks? It's what other people think that matter. But for the purpose of pleasing God, of being more closely united with Him by charity. And how many communions take place when people in the same church won't even give each other the sign of peace? Oh, we don't talk to that part of the family. Full stop. It happens. And of seeking this divine remedy for his weaknesses and defects. Now, although it is most expedient that those who communicate frequently or daily should be free from venial sins, especially from such as are fully deliberate. Now that's, you see, hurting the Sacred Heart. How can you love and deliberately, willingly hurt? It does not make sense. Swearing. Oh, it's only a venial sin, therefore I can do it. Smoking. It's not really a sin at all. Think about that. The lungs full of horrible stuff. Burning £20 notes. No sense as regards responsibility for handling money, for one thing. Management, stewardship. And I was talking to a girl who's doing medicine or radiology at Trinity, and she had just been looking at the lungs of a dead man, 2 dead people. One person had not smoked, the other had. And it was completely different. It was infested. It was completely of a different colour. The whole thing was rotten. That's what a smoker is doing. Only a venial sin. And from any affection thereto. Nevertheless, it is sufficient that they be free from mortal sin, with the purpose of never sinning mortally in future. And if they ever have this sincere purpose, it is impossible that daily communicants should gradually emancipate themselves from even venial sins. In other words, if that happens, they will get themselves free from these sins, if they have a desire to collaborate with the grace. He's saying, therefore, you don't have to be a saint, but you have to be coherent. So I leave you with this, my friends, because it's all matter for reparation. When we're in that state of, for instance, frequently coming, we're in a greater state also of being used to. And a priest, of course, is at the maximum of that risk. We get used to, we're familiar with the holy things. But it happens to lay people as well. Proof. They don't really prepare. They don't really give thanks. They're not really aware. They're coming right now into the presence of angels. Is God reigning, or are we?